I recently saw a brief clip about an interview with a young man who had converted and become Catholic. And he said what attracted him to the Catholic faith was the traditional Latin Mass. It was its beauty and its depth. He could tell in the Catholic Church that he was encountering something transcendent. And he said everything else that he investigated, different religions that he looked at, seemed like a cheap sales pitch. And I thought that was an interesting phrase to think about because we're surrounded by a lot of cheap sales pitches. Every time we see a commercial on TV, they're trying to sell us something that's going to make us happy. And every ad that pops up on the internet's trying to sell us something. And even religion can become just a cheap sales pitch. There's a lot of New Age spiritualities that promise to make us fulfilled. There's a lot of self-help gurus who all promise they have the key to our happiness. And, there's the prosperity gospel. There's people that preach that if we follow Christ and we're just faithful to him, he'll make us rich. Because that's the greatest goal in life, of course, is to be rich. There was a study done in 2005 that looked at the religious beliefs of teenagers at the time, who'd be a little older by now. But it said that the predominant religion by far of young people was therapeutic. And what they mean is that young people viewed religion as a way to make them feel good and to make them happy. And I guess it is good if we come to church and come away feeling uplifted. But is that really the highest purpose of religion? Is to make ourselves feel good? Is that what this is all about? In today's gospel, the first words are pretty important to understand the context. It says, great crowds were traveling with Jesus. There were all sorts of people who were flocking to our Lord. And you can imagine that they would have been there for a variety of reasons. A lot of people probably just heard about the miracles, or they had witnessed one of the miracles and they were excited about that and they wanted to see more miracles. Or other people probably recognized that there were large crowds of people and they wanted to see what all the excitement was about. They didn't want to miss out. And so you had a lot of people who were probably following our Lord for superficial reasons. And Jesus was not concerned about the number of people following him. He wasn't concerned about how big the crowds were. And that's why he gives today's teaching about authentic discipleship. What Jesus was looking for were disciples who are willing to sacrifice everything to follow him. He wanted disciples that loved him more than they loved their possessions and their material wealth. He wanted disciples that loved him even more than their own families. So our Lord is not literally telling us to hate our father and mother, wife, and children, but what he's saying to us is that fidelity to him has to be higher than anything else. And that's a demand that only God himself can make of us. And so our Lord was not offering us a cheap sales pitch. He wasn't saying, if you just get this product or do this thing, it's going to make you happy. What he was demanding was complete and total fidelity. Every single one of us are created for greatness. None of us are created for mediocrity. And greatness does not come by buying some product or falling for some cheap, superficial spirituality. Greatness comes when we are willing, as an act of total love and fidelity, to lay down everything to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. Greatness comes by an internal commitment of our will to give everything to Jesus Christ. What does that look like practically? Well, it's going to be different for every person because God's calling for each one of us is going to be different. But for families, what it means is that our families are first of all open to life and to the will of God, and that Jesus Christ is the center of every one of our families. that every member of our family recognizes that it's Jesus Christ who's the foundation of our family. That means that some of our young people, hopefully many of our young people, are going to be called to become priests or religious and literally lay everything down for our Lord, to follow him. It means embracing the moral teachings that our Lord gives us in their entirety, not picking and choosing what we want to believe. And being a disciple means entering into a deep life of prayer. Because if we aren't spending time with our Lord and if we're not listening to his voice, then we're not going to know how to follow him. And so that's what the life of a disciple is going to look like. It requires a radical reorientation of our values so that we're not living for ourselves and for what looks good at the moment, but we're living for Jesus Christ. And so some of us here today have probably already made the commitment to be disciples. Some of us have already made the commitment that we are willing to lay down anything for Jesus Christ to follow him. And that's great. But this is an invitation for us to renew that commitment and maybe to discern and to look at our life and see if there's ways in which we're called to enter more deeply into that life of discipleship. Maybe there's some attachments or things that we need to let go, or some relationships that are not glorifying God that we need to look at through a different lens. But for other people who are here today, we may have never made that commitment. We might be like the large crowds that are following Jesus, just wondering what this is all about. Or maybe we're here because somebody else has brought us here. In which case, Jesus Christ, who is the God of the entire universe, is calling you to lay down everything to be his disciple. He's calling on you to make that commitment and to reorient your life to him. And he's waiting for an answer. And so I encourage you to say yes to Jesus Christ. True greatness is going to be found in none of the things that this world offers us. True greatness is only going to be found when we lay down our lives before Jesus Christ and commit to be his disciples. And so I encourage you, as you reflect upon these readings today, to say yes to Jesus Christ. Because it's only in giving up everything that we're going to find true greatness.